In our gospel reading for Easter Sunday, Jesus says to Mary, "Go, tell them I am ascending." In other words, go, tell them about what you have seen. Go tell them that I am not dead. Tell them about resurrection. Tell them about life. New Testament theologian Dr. Jamie Clark Soules says that John uses a special past tense in Greek with Mary's announcement to the disciples when she says, "I have seen the Lord." The point of this tense is to convey action completed in the past that has an ongoing effect in the present. So when Mary says, "I have seen the teacher," she is not merely reporting a past account of something, but she is laying bare her own becoming. In Clark Soules' words, quote, "She is seen in a way that changes her life, its direction, and her legacy forever," end quote. So when we talk about resurrection, we are also talking about the stuff of our own becoming. And Mary's interaction with Jesus is a reminder that resurrection is relevant to us because our own resurrections are wrapped up in our becomings, and our becoming awake and aware to God's presence within us and around us, becoming awake and aware of divine proximity. This is the heartbeat of our faith journeys. We don't need to know all the answers about God to be in proximity. We don't need to be monks or mystics with our spiritual practices. We don't need all our theological ducks in a row or have our lives figured out. Proximity has the power to relieve the pressure that otherwise binds us to inaction because it presents us with terms we might actually be able to handle. Namely, that our faithfulness requires simply a willingness to be in proximity to the ways of Christ. In other words, we put ourselves in proximity to radical love, proximity to disruptive peacemaking, proximity to unconditional inclusion. We put ourselves in proximity to every ingredient for salvation, meaning new life, resurrection. Our willingness is enough, and we don't have to worry about opting out of the work. We don't have to worry about moving into the action of heaven on earth. Truly and consistently practicing proximity will breathe new life into us. It can resurrect our dead or dying faiths, and it will change how we live and move in the world in the process. Our willingness is enough. It is enough because the longing for divine proximity is innate. It already lives within us, created as a part of us. I look at the creation story, that etiological narrative that is meant to answer questions about why and how we exist, and I see hints of this longing. The story of Adam and Eve is but one of many creation stories in existence, and you may have noticed that it is told from a place of shame, from needing to explain our divine separation. You may have heard terms like total depravity or original sin in relation to this. We have inherited a creation story that stresses what we don't have, what we need to take by force, because there's never enough to go around. And I think about the book Braiding Sweetgrass and how in indigenous spirituality, the creation stories are not like this. They begin with a kindredness with Creator and a reverence for creation, offering origin stories that encourage us to learn, receive in humility, share. These paradigms are so unlike our Christian origins that emphasize our lack of proximity, our scarcity, our never enough-ness. As we move away from this harmful theology, many of us have even left faith communities behind. We've even had to let go of some relationships, just as we've discovered an urgent need to relay our foundations. And we have experienced spiritual displacement in the process. Deconstruction has displaced us. Social and political disillusionment has displaced us. Waking up and getting healed and free has displaced us. Our new ways of thinking and being and doing have been tinged with the grief of all we have lost. We have been uprooted and ungrounded. Amidst all of this, it's easy to feel like the God we once knew is dead. Maybe he is. Here's what I'm saying. Don't stay here. Don't stay in this place. Weep and wail and grieve. Take as long as you need, but don't set up shop here. This graveyard of deceased ideas and beliefs is not your home. Maybe this is what Jesus meant when he told Mary to let go, to go on. Jesus said, do not stay at this burial ground. Do not stay here with the traces of death still fresh, but go with the movement of resurrection. Jesus said, go. And Mary went with the same faith that brought her to the tomb to begin with. It was a faith in and a desire for proximity. This is the faith that ultimately resurrected her, pulling her out of her grief and compelling her to action. Mary realized that proximity required her movement toward the things of life. While we may not have faith in much these days, I am hopeful that we can have a similar faith in the power of proximity. Proximity even on the other side of deconstruction. Proximity even amidst our internal faith chaos or faith crises. Because what we are in proximity to in our daily lives has the power to make and break us, shape and change us, fill and fuel us. We don't have control of much these days, but we have some control of this. We can decide to make shifts. We can choose to move in the general direction of resurrection. We can daily tend to both our presence and our posture. We can trust that such tending has the power to deepen our awareness of the already existing divine proximity in our lives. Every year I read the Easter Sunday texts, but this year, what struck me was how Mary came to the tomb first and left the tomb last. First to show up, last to leave. And I love Mary's grit and tenacity so much. I love her absolute persistence to not leave her pain, questions, fear, uncertainty, or sadness behind a moment too soon. It reminds me of that First Testament story about Jacob who wrestled with God until he wrenched a blessing from that holy encounter. Mary's particular arrival and then her staying, even after the others had left, was not unlike that wrestling. She was demanding a blessing of her own. She may not have had faith in much. Maybe she didn't believe right away like Peter or John, or like them, head home early with a lighter heart. No, Mary was counting her losses. She was cynical. She sought Jesus even if all she could get out of her search was a dead body safely back in its tomb. Mary wasn't leaving without a sign of proximity. So, chaotic and tear-strewn as her demand for a blessing may have been, unlikely a candidate as she was, hopeless and wounded as she arrived, Mary stayed. And as we know, she would be the first to witness the resurrected Christ. She would have the honor of becoming apostle to the apostles. And it makes me think, maybe we are not lesser for our questions or our uncertainty. Maybe the less faith we have, the better. Maybe the less hope we have, the closer in proximity to God we actually are. Maybe our tenderness, our vulnerability, our doubts, and our cynicism are actually fertile ground for the kind of grit and tenacity we need to wrench a blessing. Maybe, like Mary, we are right where we should be. Could the stuff of resurrection be in our reach? The truth is, we already are in divine proximity simply by the mere fact that we are living, breathing humans, children of God with Imago Dei pulsing through our veins. It is this knowledge embodied that has the power to work in our lives in the same radical way it did Mary's. It is enough to change how we proceed in these wild times on this wild earth. And not just sustain how we proceed, but sustain us along the way. Because resurrection is about so much more than surviving. It is about rising. It is about ascending. And it is for us too. So, rather than spreading ourselves thin with a laundry list of things we ought to be doing, what if we just distilled it down to the pursuit of proximity? What if we simply drew closer to God in the best ways we knew how and called it enough? Remember, we don't have to be perfect. We don't have to have it all together. We don't need to arrive first. All we need is that willingness to put ourselves in proximity to the ways of Christ. I wonder, were we to consistently do so, could we experience resurrection in our own lives, in our own ways, based on who we are, how we are wired, and the realities of our circumstances? Listen, there will never be a blueprint here. Only the gentle nudge to step into your own work and to trust that you, child of God, are empowered to do it. As we move into our birthright of divine proximity, we extend an offering to the world via our commitment to proximity, not just with Creator, but also creation. We do this knowing that we cannot see the humanity in each other without first getting into proximity of one another. This, more than anything, was the Christ agenda, getting close to the most unlikely people. So we too draw close to one another. We put ourselves in proximity to the most unlikely people. And from this vantage point, where the Imago Dei of the other is finally in sight, we receive gifts such as understanding, compassion, and openness. We receive gifts that increase our willingness. Our willingness to be in proximity becomes an act of love as natural as breathing. It becomes an act of life, our ongoing offering of resurrection to a weary and suffering world. So this Easter, I pray that expanded awareness of divine presence would nourish us, quenching our thirst, energizing us, filling our spirits, offering clarity on how to proceed in these troubling times, healing our heavy-heartedness, strengthening our bones, reminding us of the home we can build. Its foundation is peace, our displacement, a distant memory. May it be so. May proximity resurrect us. Amen.